The USA's addicted now to fossil fuel and oil, and hydrofracturing's on the rise that makes our blood just boil. We know that fracking will destroy our water and our soil. Hydrofracturing just sucks. So take your freaking fracking drills and keep them from our town. We don't want your frickin' turning all our water brown. Take your freaking fracking drills and we will shut you down. Hydrofracturing just sucks. It blows in nasty chemicals and poison all our water. It causes quakes beneath the earth, a thing it shouldn't oughta. We want safe drinking water for our sons and all our daughters, but hydrofracturing just sucks. So take your freaking fracking drills and keep them from our town. We don't want your fracking turning all our water brown. Take your freaking fracking drills or we will shut you down. Hydrofracturing just sucks.
Thank you. Good evening from IGE Talks at our headquarters on Wealthy Street by the Wealthy Street Theater, 118 Wealthy. We come here tonight to talk about the crisis of global warming. And with us tonight are a number of citizens that have a particular interest maybe, or some interest in the topic. To my left, Chris, do you want to tell us who you are?
Hi, Chris Bazowski. I am a board member here at IGE. I am a local member of Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm a Sierra Club longtime member and lived in Alaska for 10 years and saw a lot of firsthand climate change happening and care very much about this.
Okay. Chris? Kim?
My name is Kim McKeon, and I'm also a board member of IGE, and I have a great interest in the environment and climate change.
I'm Rosalia Hadach, and I am a raging granny. We work for peace, justice, and the environment. Right now, especially about the environment. We care about it so much that we sing for it.
And I'm Corinne Carey, and another raging granny, although you don't have to be a granny to rage. Definitely not. Be a grandpa, be anybody, even this high. But yeah, I'm particularly interested and have been in anti-nuclear issues and have a program that is on Channel 25 on a regular basis, and it's very often about anti-nuclear and the situation that we seem to be able to do nothing about. Palisades tells us they can't afford to close and that they can't afford to stay open. What a problem they've got.
Okay.
I'm Kate Shockey. I'm an IGE board member. I'm a local artist. I'm also a member of the Sunrise Initiative, who are doing the Green New Deal that's being introduced in Congress this week.
Good evening. My name is Vince Schumacher. I was invited here by Mike, and I am here mostly to listen. I'm hoping that I'll learn that there are some people here in Grand Rapids who are making an effort to coordinate their concerns with others around the country and try to make some real legislative change happen on the state level and federal level.
Good.
I'm Katie Villier, and I've worked with the Institute for Global Education for a long time. I'm a retired college teacher, and I'm very concerned. I think that is the greatest challenge that our humanity has had to face, and we have to do something about the destruction of our planet as soon as possible. And I just want to say I have a red shirt on today in sympathy with teachers in Denver.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
They're on strike, right?
Hi, my name is Minister Deborah Shindori Love, and I agree with Katie as well. I had the same interests or similar interests, And I'm also interested in how the climate change is relevant to the prophecy of the Bible.
Okay, and in case I missed, Mike Franz, I'm on the IGE board and occasionally moderate some of these discussions, which can be seen not only on GRTV Thursday evenings and Saturday mornings, but can also be seen on YouTube. If you care to look it up, go to IGETalks.org and select a program, and you get 24/7 access to this program and many others that we have, recorded for the last 12 years.
Many years.
Okay. Before we open up officially, I'd like to take a moment of silence for Chester. Chester Lowe was one of our producers here at IGE Talks for the last 5 or 6 years. He was a good IGE member, a board member, a member of the community. He served with Acorn. He served in so many wonderful capacities. And I'd like to take just a moment now to remember Chester, who passed away recently. Thank you, Chester, if you hear us. One of my favorite poets, Robert Frost, and I think most of you probably heard this poem. I don't know what goes on in education in schools today, but this one's classic. It's called Fire and Ice. It was written in 2019, but it's still relevant today.
Yeah.
It was written when?
2000.
You mean 90?
I meant, yeah, 2000. How do you do it? 19?
Okay.
1919. I got it.
1919.
Mr. Frost. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. What if it had to perish twice? I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. Now, without going into the desire, fire, hate part of the poem, just on the surface, what are your thoughts on how the world will end? Some say in fire, some say in ice. Now, it's possible that in Frost's time, they were aware that there was a great global calamity, a great comet that came from outer space and smashed into the earth and threw us, and not us, we weren't around yet, but the dinosaurs were thrown into an ice age that eliminated them and 2/3 of the creatures on the planet.
Wasn't Krakatoa around that time too? Where the whole, there was global winter for a whole year because of the volcano?
Yeah, we've had, ice ages along the way too. And we've also had heat ages that killed off many of the planets. And I'm here tonight to introduce us to some of the current facts regarding that. Of course, we don't have to wait for global warming to take effect. We've been talking since the splitting of the atom. We've been talking about the possibility of a nuclear holocaust that could send 2/3 of the planet into a boiling rage. That would be the fire. And then, with all of the clouds of destruction in the atmosphere, we'd go into a deep freeze, a nuclear winter. So we could have it both ways. We could have fire and ice, and it would certainly settle the hash of this planet that we call home.
One thing that's currently very troubling is that the insects may die in a couple of years. And if the insects die, there'll be no more life on Earth because we can't survive without them.
I thought I'd kind of warm us up with some of the dire predictions. These were, they were put out by Truth Out right at the very beginning of this year. From Truth Out online, 10 ways this 2018 brought us closer to climate apocalypse, and I'm going to go through this very rapidly so we cover some of the areas like insects and some of the important areas anyway. Okay. We've been talking about mass extinction all year. There have been UN reports, there have been reports suppressed by Donald Trump in the White House and so forth. But global temperatures could even double those that have been predicted by climate modeling, which has done a lot to explain this to us. But there are here phenomena we need to keep an eye on. Arctic sea ice. The Arctic Sea is melting. The last 5 years, it's almost turned into an ocean. And the United States is starting, and other countries like Russia are starting to think of it as a defense problem, and they're going to be sending stations up there and claiming things and so forth, preparing for, we used to just talk about nuclear missiles coming over the top. Now they can go by water and submarine and come right through the Arctic Ocean.
And they're also may be looking for oil up there too.
Yeah.
Another place to destroy.
Warm temperatures have become the norm in the Arctic. That is a fact, okay? Increasingly warm oceans, causing lots of problems.
So breaking off the shelf ice in Greenland and Antarctica.
Yes.
Yeah, that's okay, we'll just tuck it. Yeah, we've got that problem. The warm oceans right now are affecting us. We're sitting here on the eve of the third ice storm in Michigan, and we've recently had, what do we call it, an Arctic
Polar vortex.
polar vortex, where the Arctic air all came down here. It doesn't have to stay home anymore. It can move. And this has been exacerbated by the warming oceans, one of the warmest summers ever. And out in the Pacific, the El Nino was predicted, 74% chance coming across and drawing down that cold air to where we are now. So people say, wow, global warming, where's the cold air? What's that doing here? It's a complex phenomenon of many things, and it's all exacerbated by the fact that many of these cycles that are occurring now are reoccurring and are going to increase and accelerate the rates of things that we're going to be hearing about in this report.
Positive feedback loops.
Yeah, a biofeedback loop. Thank you, Chuck.
Positive.
Yeah.
That's like the sun warms, the Arctic melts, like in Greenland, it melts the ice and then the ground is exposed and that absorbs more sunlight than the ice did.
Okay. Methane is what we're talking about here. Methane gases are being released in our atmosphere now at alarming rates. There was a picture taken from outer space, and they showed the methane gas was leaking from the lakes, particularly in the northern areas around Greenland and so forth. And now we know that the tundra is thawing out and releasing methane gases that have been kept up there for billions of years. And this methane, people don't realize, is 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. And this is nasty stuff. It's also a byproduct of fracking. And the more fracking we do, they do not capture the methane, they just let it go. And it's leaking out of the
And
wells.
also from cattle and a lot of,
Yeah.
also.
Well, yeah, I had a quote here about, move over the, here you go. Large amounts of methane, up to 41 tons daily, were being released from a glacier in Iceland via its meltwater. This is an amount equal to the methane produced by more than 136,000 belching cows. If someone says global warming, you say cows.
Well, one thing I want to say, the global warming is kind of an obsolete term, because then it got to be climate change, and now it truly is climate crisis.
Yes, it is. We have gone that far, and that's why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
Fourth point, wildfires. Now, you're familiar with the one in California, but there was a huge one in Queensland, Australia
Yes.
this summer. And the fact is that the planet is drying up in the heat and producing more fires, which exacerbates the problem, creates another loop. You know, more carbon dioxide, more carbon thrown into the atmosphere. Our soils are being rapidly depleted of carbon. I just saw a documentary the other night on Oklahoma during the 30s,
Dust Bowl,
the what?
Dust Bowl.
Dust Bowl, that's it. 9 years they got very little rain. And the problem mostly was not created by, but exacerbated by the fact that they had plowed up all this land in 4 states. You know, Texas, Oklahoma, that whole region, Colorado. And the surface had been broken for the first time in millions of years. And all of that dust, what was there became dust and blew away. And they lost their topsoil. And they found out, they discovered that they had to do soil preservation by alternating crops and making sure things were planted. And we had to reintroduce carbon to the soil and so forth to re-enrich it. And that's what we're going to have to do too.
But that's
we'll get to
also
that later, I think.
When the Okies went to California because
Yep.
they couldn't survive anymore in Kansas.
That's right.
Yeah.
They had to leave and,
The grapes of wrath.
yes.
You know, and leave everything.
Well, we saw the fire in California, and there were several of them actually, and they're almost continuous now around the planet. People died in wildfires in Greece. This is global. We're not just talking about the United States, but you mentioned insects.
Yes.
There's an apocalypse awaiting.
But yeah, it's been in the news in the last couple of days, last week, about the insects. So many of them are dying out, and they're so important to life on Earth.
Very good, you got that.
Yeah.
Now, you heard it in the news, right? There was a time, 3, 4, 5 years ago, you didn't get anything on global warming in the news. Major media shut it out. Of course, major media is owned by corporations.
right.
It's corporate media. And corporate media owns all of the oil production, all the carbon producing coal and so forth. And they weren't talking about it. I'm sorry. And the whole entire Republican Party wasn't talking about it. I was in a conference with Vern Ehlers once, and he says, I feel lonely. He says, I'm the only one in my party who believes in global warming.
He was a scientist.
He was called Mr. Great Lakes by those people, and he, what a man, but anyway. Insects and hence the global food web are in crisis. Several studies, one of them Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, massive collapse of insects, far more widespread than previously known climate changes indicated by the leading cause. Here's some places where it's very noticeable. I've noticed it, by the way, right here in Grand Rapids. But
I remember driving in Maine last summer,
okay,
all up the coast of Maine and then back down again. And we didn't have to stop and clean bugs off our windshield once.
okay.
It was amazing.
Same this summer in
No,
Michigan.
it was astounding.
I never.
No bees or butterflies, you don't see them.
There's been a 76% decrease in flying insects last year, okay? And these are in nature preserves in Germany where they've studied this, but it's been happening everywhere. And the invertebrates like bees and beetles have decreased by 45%. And of course, these bees are pollinators.
Yeah.
And when
Bees
they're
are gone
gone,
and we're gone.
then our food supply is
4
affected.
days.
The numbers of insects are plummeting everywhere.
At
Our
one point, I
global
think that,
food production is in even greater danger of collapse, but there's other threats to it too coming up.
I think that there were, in biomass, the insects were the most life on the planet. More insects than anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And if they disappear, all sorts of problems will happen and all sorts of things that depend on it, that there's,
Yeah.
everything's interconnected, unfortunately, or fortunately.
In the nuclear age, we talked about the cockroaches
Yeah.
inheriting the planet. There'd be plenty of food for them to eat, dead things rotting. But even the cockroaches, I think, would be in trouble if they lived deep underground.
Actually, I've heard that cockroaches wouldn't live because they need humans to live. And if people died, then the cockroaches would die, because
my.
they wouldn't be able to survive.
Okay, interesting thought.
So
Broken
this is
global, go ahead,
Really,
Katie.
I'm sorry, this is, they have a name for this now, and I can't remember what it is, but it's grieving for the planet. But I don't want to grieve to the point where I can't do anything. And I think that we do need to do, number one, political things to help provide leaders that can lead
Now,
the world.
Can you hold that thought? Because towards the end, we're going to turn towards different ideas about what we absolutely must do. And of course, yeah. And if you get in too much despair, the thing that's going to happen is you're going to become,
Immobilized.
yeah, nothing can be done about it, and that isn't going to help us either. Our global food system, whether you look at it from our current system, unsustainable given the challenges that will come from a rising global population, is a really serious thing to say. How are we going to feed all those people that we're producing now? The likelihood of simultaneous crop failures for the 4 biggest corn exporters, that's the United States, Argentina, Brazil, and Ukraine, suffering yield losses of 10% or greater increases from 7% at 2 degrees Celsius, warming to 86% at 4 degrees. And if we hit 4 degrees, it's end game. Okay, and 86% of our basic food stocks can be impossible. Nearly 1 billion people went hungry last year. The numbers guaranteed decline. Nutritional value of crops decreases too as a result of global warming. Okay, we're depleting our soils in ways that, and the droughts mixed with too much rain, too little water, those cycles that we go through. The National Academy of Sciences showed how climate change will increase the risk of simultaneous crop failures across the planet's largest corn-growing regions. Okay, now that's an increase of 4 degrees Celsius. There'll be an uninhabitable and permanently altered regions. There was a good movie on Netflix I saw last month called 10. And the teacher that drew me in because they had a balloon floating in on the horizon. And it turned out that balloon was inhabited by a black man who was visiting what turned out to be the last woman on Earth. And region 10 still had enough oxygen to sustain life. And she had just said goodbye to her population of bees, and her father was dead. He had gone on a mission outside the area and didn't come back. And then they began the struggle. And they had there was some group of humans that were getting ready to leave to go to Venus on an extended thing, a survival thing. And they couldn't get to that area when they moved beyond the area where his balloon could travel. So they knew they were the last 2 people on Earth. Interesting movie.
It's like
You
the
spell-
the Last
realistic.
Flower, the Thurber book.
Okay, yeah.
And you spell that 10, T-E-N?
It's just called 10. It's on Netflix. The Great Barrier Reef, Australia. The heat waves that we've had in the world are destroying our reefs, our ocean reefs. Okay, they really alarm scientists. Another bleaching event on the horizon. In the Paris Climate Change Agreement, did you grab that thing? Global governments pledged to try to keep warming within a limit of 1.5 centimeters above pre-industrial levels. And they ain't gonna make it. Overheated waters everywhere. Another report warning that the planet could lose most of its coral reefs by 2050, looking increasingly like an over-conservative projection. We'll probably lose them before. That's in some of our lifetimes anyway. And by the way, that's an interesting point, isn't it? When you talk to people about this stuff, some of them will say, oh, it doesn't matter to me, I'll be in my grave by then. And then I say, well, you have
But your children and
grandchildren,
grandchildren and
great
great-grandchildren move around.
and it never seems to make a difference. That kind of denial gets us nowhere. The odds are higher that another El Nino could occur next year. That's already here. Does not bode well for Earth's already overheated oceans. Only 12 years left to limit warming. That was one of the final points here. That's the United Nations report. Okay. If governments fail to act swiftly and dramatically and within the next dozen years, droughts, flooding, and increasingly extreme heat waves will increase drastically. Drastically. We ain't seen nothing yet. Thanks. The report pointed out several important thresholds. Just an extra 0.5 degrees centigrade of warming beyond 1.5 would essentially completely annihilate corals, dramatically accelerate the loss of what is left of the Arctic sea ice, and the proportion of the global population exposed to water stress would be at least 50% higher. And of course, it's already happening in the world, isn't it? Their last point of their report was that we are nowhere near meeting climate change goals. While many world leaders met in Poland for the COP24 climate talks in December, it was already clear that we are nowhere near on track to attain the goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Given we are currently already at 1.1, the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015 was non-binding, and we're on track to see at least 3.5 degrees centigrade warming by 2100. That's the end of this century. Okay, and much more after that. Now, keep in mind, that's not going to be fun. In 4 degrees, it's over. Yet it became known in 2017 that the oil giants BP and Shell were already planning for global temperatures to increase by 5 degrees centigrade by 2050. The oil companies know it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
But
you know,
but they
nothing.
see determined to get all the profits they can out of carbon while
Yeah.
all they're getting is good. And then it's probably true, this is my own private thought, that they want to get to the point where once they've got all the money, they can get all of the money and keep it for the solutions to the problems. Then we'll have windmills, and then we'll have solar panels.
It'll be too late.
and
But it'll be
the
too
other
late.
things, or any other thing they can dream of. This report was issued by Dar Jamal, one of the top climate reporters with Truth Out. There's a book out he's written called The End of Ice. But, you know, the world could end in ice, could end in fire,
Or both.
or both.
Well, where does that bring us?
Yeah. Chris is more important than carrying my books around. Just a short introduction by ordained Presbyterian minister. Maybe you could give a sermon like this. I don't know. The brief introduction, he said, that the issue before us is death. Not only our individual death, which is more eminent for some of us this morning than others, but our collective death. We have begun the 6th great mass extinction driven by our 150-year binge on fossil fuel. The litany of grim statistics is not unfamiliar to many of you. We are pouring greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at 10 times the rate of the mass extinction known as the Great Dying, which occurred 252 million years ago. The glaciers in Alaska alone are losing an estimated 75 billion tons of ice every year. And by the way, all this frozen freezing that we went through several weeks ago, Alaska was warmer all that time, warmer than we were the whole time. So the heat's going up there, the cold air is coming down here, you kind of get the picture. The glaciers in Alaska alone are losing an estimated 75 billion tons of ice every year. The oceans, which absorb over 90% of the excess heat trapped by greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, are warming and acidifying, melting the polar ice caps and resulting in rising sea levels, oxygen-starved ocean dead zones. In that movie 10 said there was still an area on the planet that had oxygen, but a lot of the Earth was gone. We await a 50 gigaton burp or pulse of methane from thawing Arctic permafrost on the east. Siberian Arctic shelf, which will release about 2/3 of the total carbon dioxide pumped into the atmosphere since the beginning of the industrial era. That would be 150 years ago, by the way. Some 150 to 200 species of plant, insect, bird, and mammal are going extinct every 24 hours.
Wow.
That's one thing we didn't talk about, the extinction of animals on our planet. Thousands times the natural background rate. So the extinction rate is accelerating incredibly, up to 1,000 times what it was, or should be.
And they're saying that the, will be no longer any mountains that has ice on them. The Himalayas, the ice is melting, and a lot of the ecology depends on ice, like the snow melt in California, which gives them a lot of their water.
Right.
If you don't have any snow and then that's bad, and
Yeah, they're getting plenty of rain, but it just floods right down through.
Well, the ice caps on the mountains keep the temperatures cooler.
yes.
Right.
And when those start to melt,
Yeah.
and it's
This
The
is
pace of extinction.
Himalayas are in real danger.
Mhm. This pace of extinction is greater than anything the world has experienced since the disappearance of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. Ultimately, feedback mechanisms will accelerate the devastation, and there will be nothing we can do to halt obliteration. Past max extinctions on Earth were characterized by abrupt warming of 6 to 7 degrees Celsius. We are barreling toward those numbers. The mechanical models for this global temperature rise predict an initial 70% die-off of the human species, culminating with total death. That means 100%. This is Chris Hedges, an ordained Presbyterian minister. And I've never heard a sermon on global warming.
Yeah, also the, geological ages, and we've entered a new age now, which is the age of man. That, it's, I forget what homo something, but it's,
It's called the Anthropocene.
Anthropocene.
Okay.
And it used to be all the other, when you grew up and you learned all these geographic names and times, but now it's a time of man, and that's when we're doing all the damage.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've established the problem. Not in its entirety or complexity, but we cannot ignore what we just talked about. And there was back during the war, they said there was a Marine general wanted out of Iraq. He says, well, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. It sounded like good advice. So somehow, the beginning of the turnaround, if we're going to be able to do it in time, because this is a time-related thing, and I have no faith in any of my investments I've ever made that had a time limit on them. If time was involved, I was in trouble every time. You know, the clock is ticking, and we're racing, it seems, accelerating towards the destructions we haven't yet come to grips with.
Can anybody explain to me what the new green deal is?
Okay.
Chris, do you know what that is?
I am familiar. Do you want to talk about it? With the Sunshine Movement? The Sunshine Movement and the Citizens Climate League, or Citizens Climate Lobby, I believe, are the two strongest forces on Capitol Hill
And
right
the
now.
Sunrise Movement has endorsed the, what they call the Green New Deal, which is, it's not just climate, it talks also about
Justice issues.
justice issues and
Job creation.
job creation and just the whole world and everything that's in it. And a bill has been put before the House and the Senate this week. Probably may not have a good chance, but at least it's something that people should endorse. And it is, they're trying to do a positive thing about how we can change the world in a good way. And
Could you
not
share
just not use plastic or whatever, but to change the entire way that our civilization is acts and is set up.
Well, yeah, based on the New Deal
Yeah.
that started with FDR, and I guess Hoover even was the first one to have to start to look at that when, after the Great Depression, and what needed to happen in our society to fix things. And we are now at the point where our society has so many different layers, levels that need to be looked at and fixed. So the Green New Deal has 5 strong points. The one is to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers. The second is to create millions of good, high-wage jobs in clean energy and ensure, and it's not only in clean energy, but the transition to those types of jobs and those types of industries is going to bring people that are in lower income positions right now, bring more money into their pockets, which they're then going to have to spend, and you're going to create jobs in every sector of life, not just in clean energy. And, you know, creating just economic security for more people, because right now, I'm not economically secure. I'm sure some others sitting here are not, and many younger than me are not. The third is to invest in infrastructure and industry in the United States to sustainably meet the challenge of the 21st century. Some other, jobs. The fourth is to secure all people of the United States for generations to come. Clean air and water, climate and community resiliency, healthy food, access to nature, and a sustainable environment. And then the fifth, all-encompassing point is to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of indigenous peoples, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, people with disabilities, and youth, referred to in this resolution as frontline and vulnerable communities.
When I listen to that, I keep getting this nagging thought that it's calling on our central government to do all this stuff for us. I don't think they're going to be able to do it.
No, I think.
We're going to have to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, that's what the,
And they're not likely to
They're
do
not
it.
doing
Green New Deal is about people doing it, it's not asking the government.
And it's got to be global.
Yes.
We can't, we could take care of the United States and say, there, we're okay. No, all you indigenous peoples and stuff leaving South America and Latin America, come to our borders because we flooded your coastlines and we wetted your jungles and washed out your...
But also they say that
Food.
the top 1% of the top 1% is, of the top 90%, 99, 1% of that owns 90% of the wealth or more
in the world.
in the US, in the world.
Well,
Yes.
virtually.
Oh, probably in the world also.
In the world
probably
also.
more than-
That's
probably
a
more so
statistic for
in
the
world.
US.
And it's not just 1%, it's one,
Fraction of 1%.
it's a fraction of 1%.
But you can work on those problems individually and never do anything to stop global
For the
warming.
planet.
We need to pull that out and make it our number public enemy number one. You know, and there's all these other things we need to be working on and that are interrelated to it, but we better get after it. There are things being proposed, the Citizens Climate Lobby has talked about a carbon tax now for the last 20 years.
10 years.
10 years?
Yep.
Okay. Well, one of the people for the guy from Massachusetts supported it originally, and he just came out with Arturo Cortez or whatever her name is and just supported this.
He's the one who
Yeah.
put it in the Senate.
But it hasn't succeeded. They're getting close on it. But I have to ask, you know, what's the good of asking corporations to pay for the carbon they're putting up there when it's already too late? I mean,
To discourage them from doing it anymore.
do it so they will stop? No, the idea wasn't to stop them, was to create a fund of money that we could use to distribute.
Well, no, it does both.
It's also a change in the initiatives or the, you know, what do you call them?
Incentives?
Incentives, that's the
Right.
word, thank you, Chair.
We want to
Yeah.
disincentivize.
And the disincentives are taxes, and that's an obvious one. There are others.
Well, but it's not a tax, it's a fee, because the
Well,
money is
okay.
not going to go to the government. So, now, I understand what you're saying about the Sunrise. Now, I was just introduced to what the Sunrise Movement is doing, and my biggest question to them is just what you said. This is for the United States, and we are a small part of all this pollution that's affecting the climate. And one thing that I feel very strongly about with CCL is that it's worldwide, and it
The
is
problem is,
people, CCL has people working in, I want to say, close to 50 countries, you know, in Asia, in Europe, everywhere, working to push this change, push this carbon fee, or this energy, it's energy innovation and a carbon dividend act that would bring about a fee. And the
And then we'll go back
big
to the
thing that
people.
pushes with this fee is that the fee starts low. And it gives these companies, you know, a taste of what's going to happen if they don't change. And if they don't change, then the fee goes up.
so
And if they don't
how
change
many
again-
decades will that take for that fee to get to the point where they say, we're out of business?
Well, I think.
We need to practically put them out of business to do what we need to do.
But it's also that there's not just one way to do stuff. I think that both the Green New Deal
Yeah.
and the climate lobby, that they can work together.
Yeah.
And that you can't just,
Right.
well, you need lots of different things happening.
Yeah, that's one of CCL's main points is that, you know, the big thing for them is they're bipartisan, and I don't, the feeling that I get from the Sunrise Movement is they are not as bipartisan, and they are more of kind of the old school, let's get in there and raise hell and, you know, raise our voices and let them know that how important we, the citizens, believe this is, which, you know, I think we're to the point, this, you know, this has started in colleges and with the younger generation, and they're to the point where, you know, I don't think they're wrong in going in there and yelling about this, you know, when this report from the UN comes out, says we have 12 years.
People in charge are not cooperating. Like a couple of years ago, when the bees were dying, I would go to the commission's meeting, and I would plead with them, ban this pesticide that's killing the bees. Nothing happened. Over and over again, I pleaded with them. And Monsanto has a lot of money, so nothing happened. They just wouldn't listen.
But unfortunately, it's for me, because it's so upsetting that you can't yell out the truth at times, but I see, you know, it's important to me, I see, at least in this community, that churches could really lead the way talking about this, and I'm Catholic, and I would like my church to do that, and I really did have a good experience just this weekend with them, some people agreeing to do some things, and also the priests having putting something like this in their sermon. But there, of course, you need to do a lot more, and subtly, I think, say, we have to change our leaders, because our leaders are sending us into hell.
They're not leading.
They're not
And-
leading in this way.
That's a
They're
great
leading the wrong
bipartisan,
way.
What?
that's a great bipartisan
That's,
place to
that's
start.
how I feel,
you know, is the
because
churches, because
we,
you're going to
we
get
have a
all walks
tradition,
of life.
I think you're right, Chris, of simple living, and of saying, that you live simply so others may live.
Right.
And there's some really good things that have to do, certainly with my religion, that have to do, and I think with most of the world's religions.
So you think religion plays a role? in it?
I think so, and I've
It
seen
should.
it. I just really want to, I know I am this proud mother of my son, who is a owner of a large, successful solar business. They have a house only with solar electricity, and they have 2 electric cars, and now the company's also selling cars. It is in Colorado, and they do have, and people always make this argument, there's some more sunshine there. But there, lots and lots of people are doing this. This is a grassroots thing.
Guess what?
And
There's
even,
plenty of sunshine in Michigan.
yeah, there's,
The solar
we may not
business
have
will
as
thrive
much,
here.
There's plenty.
there's
And we have
enough
good
to make sense to put solar, every house should have solar.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
Every beach should have.
Every beach, yeah.
should have
But wind is
power.
blowing constantly, where,
That's
you know,
right.
you
That's
get,
right.
and I'm driving back through Ohio on Highway 30 and US 30 towards Indiana, and I see hundreds and hundreds of windmills.
Right.
Now, I've gone up north and been inspired by one little windmill park I see up there, you know.
Going up by Cadillac.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Hundreds
getting
and
the
hundreds.
water.
I didn't even know that Ohio was into it. I know if I was
Indiana.
driving in Iowa, I would see windmills galore. They love windmills there. They grew up with them on their farms. you
And
know.
also with windmills, you can still have agriculture down below. It doesn't.
Oh, yeah, the
you know,
corn's
it's-
growing peacefully below
Yeah.
these,
that it
the
doesn't,
pictures are-
you don't have to take away the fields, you still
No.
have them, and
and they say, well, they're too loud. Well, we stopped at a rest area, and there was one right there. I didn't hear it.
So how do you get the attention of the people that can be very instrumental in making these changes? Do you get together and go to them with a letter of interest, or, I know Katie talked about, talking to the church leaders and having them to go before us.
A lot of churches are doing it.
Yes,
I
there
think
are
we do it in
A
a
few.
lot of different ways. Like,
A
I
few
know
are
that
doing it.
the
Yeah.
Green New Party is going to go down on Wednesday. They're going to meet at 9:30 in the Calder Plaza, and they're going to take letters to Gary Peters' office.
Okay.
And then on the 18th, they're going to take letters to Amash about, and they made they were here yesterday, made a whole bunch of calls and things, and they're and I think we need a lot of different efforts like this, and it's not just, and everybody does things differently, but it
Yes.
can all help. We need to build on each other and not tear each other down.
Right.
The book 350, or Earth, E-A-A-R-T-H, by Bill McKibben, said that we had to keep our emissions at 350, the carbon emissions.
Yeah.
And then we were approaching that, and then we did a blow by, and now we're up over 400 in just a matter of a year and a half. I mean, it just gone over 400. And anyway, in his book, he says, we're gonna have to learn to live locally, live simply, produce our own food. Now, we can do that, but you have to encourage local farming, you have to support it financially. And that, and the big agribusiness is just making it harder on the environment anyway. And all the
Buying
meat that we
organic.
consume, all those belching cows and belching pigs.
As well as things like small farms, people can also do small gardens in their yard and grow food. I think there's one town in England where they have lots of gardens and farm, and everybody can take anything. It's just everyone grows something and it's
Yeah,
free
they
to
had their
anyone who wants
victory
it.
gardens during World War
Yeah.
II. They know they can
Yeah.
grow produce
And they have
themselves.
some
They know.
gardens here in different
Yeah.
A lot
areas.
of,
Yeah.
we have community
There should be
gardens.
more.
We need to build on, there are lots of wonderful institutions that we need to build on, publicize. And I don't think the media, even public television and radio is doing a very poor job. Because it's not like real sexy, it's like a community. It's saying, but okay, I'm already, yeah, I've got big gardens in my yard, when, you know, but if we heard it a lot, I think that we would begin to think this is a normal way for humans to live.
Yeah, there's a
Right.
couple of things I would like IGE to do. Like, I'm going to talk to the city and see if we can put a couple of gardens on the side, because the inside of the building is owned by the city, leading to the parking, and we could put 2 or 3 raised beds there
Instead of mulch and bushes.
instead of mulch and bushes. And the other thing is that I would like IGE to do more smart recycling, to do more composting and things, because a lot of the recycling stuff doesn't really get recycled. It's, and China has stopped taking a lot of stuff because the American stuff is too dirty for them. And they can't, so they've, I think they call it the China sword, and they're not taking things that they used to take.
Pizza boxes.
Pizza boxes never were. But
Right,
even,
because there's.
no, not even, not pizza
contaminated.
boxes, any kind of paper they don't take. They don't take plastic anymore. They don't, all the things that we, put into our recycling thing and go, it's,
I think this crisis
Yeah.
is beyond that.
Yeah.
I think recycling was something that we all felt
Yeah.
good about when I was a child and
Yeah.
when I was growing up. I don't think that any recycling movement is going to help our crisis. I think that it's a complete change of thought on what we are consuming and what we have to buy. And the fact that Myers always has to have avocados and pineapples and mangoes and all these things that have to be trucked in, shipped in, flown in, and the amount of carbon that is put out there so that every single grocery store in North America has all this produce that is not local, like my aunt was just telling my son how the only blueberries that she ever had as a child here in Michigan, when it was not summertime, came out of a jar when they made blueberry preserves. And you didn't have fresh blueberries at Christmas time. You didn't have fresh cherries at Christmas time. And that thinking is something that I really think that
well, I think it's
we
also
need
how
to
everything
push
is
for.
packaged. How much
That too, the amount of
everything is in
packaging.
plastic.
I just
think-
saw condensed milk that
Yes.
now comes in plastic instead of a
Yes.
can.
And,
Condensed milks always come in a can.
Yeah.
Why does it have to come in plastic now?
and, yeah, it's,
Yeah.
it's just terrible. And there are some supermarkets in Europe where they have a whole aisle of things that are packaged ecologically.
Or in bulk, where you
In
have
bulk.
to bring your own.
Yeah, or you bring your own thing. And like, I can think of how many stuff, like, if I went to the laundry, I have so many bottles of detergent that I get rid of, and when they're over, I just, hopefully they'll be recycled. But it's
Right.
just, if there were a way that you could not have it in a different way.
Or just take that
Yeah.
bottle and go
Take
back.
the bottle and back and.
Fill it back up.
We were doing that
Yeah.
in food co-ops.
Yeah.
And we did it a lot, and, but,
I think it needs to be expanded, and I think it needs to be started again and have people, because it's just, there's like so much plastic and waste, just,
All of these issues that we're talking about, and there are dozens more,
Yeah.
there's an issue that overrides all of them, and that is, do you compel these changes or do you encourage the changes by
I think
somehow
compel.
changing the incentives.
I think we have to compel,
To a certain degree.
absolutely,
Really?
not to
Okay.
a certain degree. To
So we have
complete-
we have an ecological police
You gotta
force.
shut the coal plants off. You
Absolutely.
gotta shut them down.
Absolutely.
All right.
To
I-
put those people,
I'm
take them
not
out of the
saying you're
mines and
wrong.
put them
I'm
into
just-
clean energy
No,
jobs.
I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm
completely
just saying that
for-
there are some social costs to
Absolutely.
that
Oh,
kind
yeah,
of.
that's a big, big.
Yeah.
And can we, I would like to compel people, but can we do it realistically?
Right.
Will it happen, will it, will,
Yeah, who's gonna favor?
who's gonna favor, who's going to enforce it?
We're very much running out of time. I might wrap it up with what happened in Europe, and I think the younger people in our viewing audience might appreciate this. In Davos, Switzerland, a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist tells the world leaders to act as if the house was on fire. She went to the World Economic Forum, traveled by trains, not by private jet like all the other big wigs that went there to the World Economic Forum. The forum had defended globalization as a force for good that improves lives and boosts prosperity, but the truth of the matter is done just the opposite. So Thunberg, the teenager whose speech to a climate conference in December had gone viral, gave another to the World Economic Forum on Friday, did not mince her words amid concerns that nations won't meet their target of keeping global warming below 2.7. We owe it to the young people to give them hope, she said. I want you to act as if the house was on fire, because it is.
I think there's one Boston billionaire hedge fund who does not go to Davos because he thinks it's a waste of time. He thinks that it doesn't do it, it's all these rich people getting together and having fancy meals, and that he would rather do things that make sense and, not just do something real and not just go and take a private jet and have fancy meals.
Well, I don't
Thank
know,
you.
it sounds like a good thing to say, but the rest of his life is, he's a hedge fund manager. What can you say good about them?
Well, he's one of the better ones.
Depends on what he invests in, I
Yeah,
suppose.
apparently he's,
Hedge funds are,
no, but
heads I
apparently,
win, tails you lose.
no,
That's
but
what those guys
apparently
do.
what he invests in is better than most hedge, he's not just out to make money, he's out to make things better.
Send letters to the legislature.
Without making anything, just make things better.
Going with- Okay, well, next month we're gathering again. I think it's next month in March. The topic will be the housing crisis brought on by what? Well, whatever's causing it, but affordable housing in Grand Rapids and everywhere is being
50 years
a
of it.
problem.
A large part of it is outside investors coming to
Yeah.
Grand Rapids and
Okay.
buying up, and then.
Well, you're all on the list. You'll know when this comes up. Chuck does an excellent job editing, and he gets the word out when it's on YouTube, and you can all preview it and share it with your friends and spread the word.
I think we need another hour.
Are we going to end with
Maybe we'll
another song?
revisit. We'll revisit
Yes.
after a couple of
I
years.
think we should
to
end
see
with
where we're
another
at.
song.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all for coming.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
One more song.
Mother Earth is calling, asking us to rise up. All right? Again, go ahead.
Mother Earth is calling, asking us to rise up against pollution that's found everywhere. No one should be allowed to dump their garbage in the lakes or spew pollutants into our air. Calling on people to come together, come and protect our dear Mother Earth. Let's make sure our air and our water will stay clean. We will forever protect Mother Earth. Global warming is looming and there's nothing being done. And conservation is just a scary gnome. We continue to drive the big guzzling SUVs and keep ignoring the earth, our home. Calling on people to come together, come and protect our dear Mother Earth. Let's make sure our air and our water will stay clean. We will forever protect Mother Earth.
Amen.
Raging Granny.